Well, today is going to be a bit of a weird one. There's a lot of talk today from young people about choosing not to have children. And I was one of those people. I'm somebody who chose not to have children. And now that I look back on that as at the bright age of 52 years old, I realize that that was probably the worst decision I've ever made. When I was a young man, I was not highly educated. I had to work my ass off. And so everything became about my career. And for me, it was construction. Started working construction as a laborer, eventually worked up to where I was a project manager and managing these extremely large jobs. But I was never doing it because I loved it. I was doing it to try to show the world that I was competent, that I could do something, that I had value. And so my whole career, my whole way of thinking was just all about working and working hard. And I kind of put everything aside. I did fall in love and get married to a wonderful wife. But, we were both at that point. I was in my 30s, late 30s. She was in her 30s as well. And we just, it just didn't seem like the right time. And, we still got some time. And then that time went and it just disappeared like, just dust in the wind. And it just withered away. And today, like I said, a 52-year-old man, I realized I shouldn't have never let that moment pass. And all that energy and all that time and effort that I was putting into this career means absolutely nothing to me now. I mean, the career is great. It paid the bills. It did what it needed to do, but it never really fulfilled me. It never did anything that, gave me anything emotionally rewarding. There's always a moment. I ride bicycles, and I always think there's a moment in which I will be laying in a ditch, bleeding out if I got hit by a car. And what would go through my mind? What would be the things that I would, rejoice about in my life? The things that I did, the things that, I would look back upon and say, man, that was a great time. Or I love my friends. All these moments. And I could tell you none of those moments had to do with work. None of those moments had to do with anything in the industry that I was working in, and I had some great relationships, but frankly, the majority of those relationships would not be something I would be thinking about on my deathbed. I would be thinking about my friends. I would be thinking about those experiences that I had, those times that I spent out at the beach with, my wife and our dogs and all of these moments that have nothing to do with what I was concentrating on 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. As somebody who has gone through that journey, looks back and looks at people who have children and how much different their lives are than mine. And let me just start with, I think, the thing that really made it all very apparent to me. So the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen, the most beautiful moment that I've ever witnessed was not something like this, sitting out here at the beach with this unbelievable landscape, absolutely beautiful. And it was this moment where I was sitting in a restaurant in San Jose, and it was this Italian restaurant. We're just sitting in the mall. It was in a very fancy restaurant, but this Pakistani man had his whole family there, and you could tell that he had probably several children and all their grandchildren, and everybody was kind of seeing this giant family because the kids were kind of, it was getting towards the end of the night, and those kids were kind of running amok as kids do, running up and down the aisles, and all the parents are trying to wrangle them back in. And you just saw this moment when this man he was in a booth. He was leaned back, and you see him sitting there, and he's kind of gazing out upon his family. And it was this moment where he had his wife leaning against him. He had his young grandchild asleep in his arms. And then again, all his rest of his family were all in big discussions, and children running up and down the aisles, and waiters trying to, corral them back in. And as he gazed upon it, it was like the universe opened up, and the universe dumped all the most wonderful and beautiful and he just absorbed this moment where he gazed upon his children, and he was just lost in it. And it was this moment of gratitude and appreciation and pride and love and adornment. And his eyes kind of glazed over, and I kind of had that moment watching him, and it was beautiful. It was the most beautiful moment that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I look back at that moment, and that's a moment that I will never have. That's a moment that it would never, I'll never be able to participate in. I was fortunate enough to be in that moment, to watch somebody experience that, to look upon their family, to look upon the thing that they've raised, the energy that they put into life in the return of that investment. I'm not going to have that. And that saddens me. And it saddens me not for like a selfish reason. It's because, frankly, the more I think about children and more I think about why we didn't have children, frankly, not having children makes me a selfish, frankly, it makes me a selfish prick. I was blessed. I was been given this life, and my life has been fairly hard. I've not had a great life. I wasn't born in the greatest situation. I've gone through struggle, and but I've had an opportunity to live. I've had an opportunity to experience life. I've had an opportunity to sit here and see this world. I could have very easily been a piece of this sand, a piece of this mountain behind me, or a tree, and never really get to experience the universe the way we do as human beings. We get to gaze upon the stars. We get to gaze upon the earth in which we live. We get to understand the universe at such a more majestic and deeper level than all of the atoms in my being could have been something else, but yet never reflecting upon the stars in which I'm surrounded by. Not giving somebody that same opportunity, knowing that you're a part of the universe that gets to gaze upon itself and try to figure itself out. It's something very special, and I think very unique. And I think life is not something that is out in the universe with a tremendous amount of abundance. I think there is life out there, but it's not abundant, especially intelligent life. And yet we are so nonchalant. We take it so much for granted, and we're not willing to pass that torch on. We're not willing to allow somebody else to have that opportunity. And that's why it's selfish. And that's why I feel as I've gotten older how wrong that is, and how ashamed I am, frankly, of not being able to give that gift to someone else. Now, it doesn't mean to say that I've had a bad life. I've had a wonderful life. But when I look at people who have children, not only because I see it as something that is, I would say, a gift worth giving, but I also see the practical side of it. I also see the side that the people who I know who have children, their lives are better in a lot of different ways. In a lot of ways I don't think you would normally think of. When I look at people who have children, they're more efficient people. They do things better. They save more money. They don't waste their time. And they do that because they have less time to waste. And I think when human beings get put into a situation, they have to do things because that's the time that they have. You take advantage of that time. When you don't have a lot of commitments in your life, you kind of twiddle it away. It kind of flutters away because you always think, oh, I've got time. I can do it whenever I don't need to do it. But when you don't have that time, you're like, I need to do this now. I got to take advantage of this moment that I have. And you see parents, that people who have kids, they really take advantage of the time that they have. They value it in a different way than I think someone who doesn't have children, who doesn't appreciate the fact that, you're going to wake up, you're going to have children, you're going to have responsibilities, and these kids got to get dressed, they got to get taken care of, and they got to go, and you got to get them to school, you got to do all these things, and you know what? If I'm going to work out, I got to get up super early, I got to make this happen. I'm going to have much more clear intentions when it comes to doing something. I'm going to plan that out with a lot more vigor and detail. I'm not going to wing it. And, so I think that's a practical thing. I also see people with children their lens in which they look through is different. They have more empathy. They understand life at a different level. They look at their children and they see them growing up and they see them, experiencing life and meeting people and accepting things and taking it with, like, there's children just simply don't have the biases that we do as adults because we've experienced life. But I think that makes them more empathetic. That makes them look at life in a different way, in a more valued way. Two is one of the other things about having children that I've noticed with people is they have better groups of friends. They do more things. They have more communication with others. When you tend to be single and you tend to have, or you just are somebody who's married who doesn't have children, your friend group kind of goes down. I know there's always this kind of like, oh, I'm going to hang out with all my friends. We're going to have a great time, and just being single is wonderful. Yeah, that's only for a little bit, and then they start to have families, and those families will always adapt, to another group of people who have families because they have more in common. They have more things to talk about. They're more connected at a deeper level because they're going through the same types of things. When you don't have kids, you kind of lose your friend group. And two is you lose the ability to really kind of make those new connections because you're in a place where you're not going to a baseball game, you're not going to that softball game, you're not going to those kids events, you're not going to to some sort of church or class or things in which you have to meet and greet other people and engage with other people. So you become very solitary. You become someone who is very sheltered, and your perspective, you don't have as deep a perspective. You don't experience as much things. You don't experience as much. You don't get to have those experiences with people, and frankly, you don't get the ability to introduce yourself to other people. You lose the ability to engage with other people on a much more deeper level. One of the other main reasons why I think that we should be having children, we should be having a lot of children, is putting a log on the fire. It's putting a log on the fire of our civilization. The civilization that is giving us a sense of freedom, that's giving us the ability to be oneself, I get to travel the nation. I get to drive on these beautiful roads. I get to, on highways. I get to live in a world in which gives me, a sense of freedom where I could just roam our country. I could, I could have the job that I want. I could pursue my own goals. I could seek the future that I want to live in. There's places in the world where you don't get that opportunity. You're bound by the place. You're bound by the group in which you were born into. There's been many times in human civilization where if you were born and your dad worked in a mine, you worked in the mine, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You never got to seek something else. There's still places today. If you were born a woman in these civilizations, you don't have the same rights. You're not able to pursue the future in the way that you would want to. You're bound by that culture. And when we have an amazing culture, and I truly believe that our American culture is absolutely amazing, and yes, it's got its problems, and there's things that we've not done, there's things that we certainly could have done better throughout history. With all of that said, what we've turned out, what we've created is absolutely beautiful and amazing. We have a civilization where you get to be the person you want to be. Frankly, you could dress and do all kinds of things. You could believe that the world is flat, for God's sakes, and you're not going to get arrested for it. You're not going to you're not going to be put in jail because you just don't understand how the world works. People, scientists could go out and try to understand the universe at a deeper level. That wasn't always the case. We live in a civilization where we have so much freedom and ability to roam, to seek, to try to fulfill our desires. And if we don't put a log on that fire, it will go away. It'll disappear. It's not going to be replaced by the same thing. I've not done my part. I've not done my part for our society, our civilization. I've not done what I should have done in order to make sure, in order to ensure its existence in the future. That makes me sad. It makes me extremely sad. And again, it makes me slightly ashamed. Having the opportunity to give life, allow a civilization, a wonderful civilization, to grow and thrive into the future is a privilege. Everything around me, very much privilege. My existence is a privilege. Being part, being someone who's able to look up at this beautiful sky, I see the moon, I see these beautiful mountains and the ocean around me. This is all a privilege. It's a privilege to be a human being, to live in a universe, to exist is a privilege. And I'm not somebody who is allowing somebody, I'm not giving the gift of that privilege into the future. And also, I think the last thing is, the dying of the light. The when you're somebody who has children, who has grandchildren, who is coming to the end of their life, that rage against the dying of the light comes. You have a reason to stick around. You have a reason to keep existing. And one of the things that I fear is there's a moment in time when you're not a useful person. Your body is broken. Your mind is not at once what it was. You're not able to exist, and you're not able to produce the things that you've produced as a young person. The gift that you have is that wisdom, those experiences that you get to pass on to your grandchildren, to your family, to the people who you love and adore. And that's valuable. It's highly valuable. Frankly, we don't use it enough today. We don't treat our seniors as a resource. And that resource, when it comes to learning something that what your grandmother had to go through, what your mother had to go through, the life challenges in which they had to deal with, that experience is how we grow as a civilization. It's how we pass down our knowledge. That's what makes human beings special. We were able to pass down not only the knowledge of our civilization, but our family experiences. When there comes a point in which nobody cares about that. If you don't have a family, nobody's going to really care what you did, what you had to suffer through, or whatever. You're just going to die alone in a room, and it's going to be sad. And it doesn't mean that you don't have something worth passing on. It's just nobody's interested in it. You having a family makes that engagement. People are engaged with you because they're experiencing life with you. And I'm very fearful that there's going to be a point in which, when I die, I'm going to die alone and in a dark room with nobody around me. I mean, I hope my, obviously my wife, I think, would be there if we die or if I die before her, or she dies after me. Either way, whatever way it goes, one of us are going to die in a very sad place, and we're going to be alone, and we're not going to have a bunch of kids and grandchildren around us. We're just going to be a blip on the machine as somebody turns it off, and then your body goes to lay rest with 4 or 5 people around you. Because again, I think all of that, all the things that kids give you, is a connection to your civilization, a connection to your community, connection to one another. When you don't make that choice, you start to lose the ability to engage, to love, to thrive, to enjoy life. Because I could sit here and stare at this beach, and it is absolutely beautiful and amazing. And I'm so thankful for being here. But part of the human experience is about sitting here with other people and having that collective moment when you look at their faces, and we're all going through this experience together. We're all seeing this together. We're all enjoying this as a family, as a group of people moving through life together. And so unfortunately, I'll never get to have that experience. Again, makes me extremely sad. So I hope this is enlightening to some people. I hope it's enlightening to you. This is not me. I mean, again, I have a wonderful life. I'm very happy. But I also could look back and understand and realize the mistakes that I've made. So anyways, personal moment there, guys. Love you. Hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. See you. Before I do, I want to show you around. It's absolutely beautiful.